If you're someone who likes to set big goals and work hard, you probably know what it's like to crave structure. Maybe you thrived in school because there was always a plan, a clear path, grades, and a finish line. But after graduation, that map disappears. You're told to keep learning, but nobody explains how to do it in real life. Instead, you find yourself jumping from one article to another, starting online courses you never finish, or feeling overwhelmed by all the things you could be learning without ever seeing real results. I wrote Lifelong Learner, the Type A Guide to Designing a Personal Curriculum for people who want more from their learning. This book is for anyone who misses the clear steps of school but wants a way to keep growing as an adult on their own terms. Inside, you'll find a simple, step-by-step system for planning what to learn next, organizing your time, and actually finishing what you start. You'll learn how to pick the skills that matter most to you, turn them into small, doable projects, and build a portfolio of work you can show to others. This book is here to help you stop feeling lost or stuck when it comes to learning new things. Instead of reacting to whatever pops up online, you'll discover how to focus, make a plan, and see clear progress, even if your days are busy and your time is short. You don't need to settle for confusion, burnout, or half-finished efforts. With a little intention and some easy tools, you can build a learning routine that fits your life, helps you grow, and feels rewarding every step of the way. You don't need permission to keep getting better, just a plan that works. Let's get started. Chapter 1, The Hidden Syllabus. You've been out of school for years, maybe a decade or two. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Your brain never stopped needing what school gave you. Structure, progression, a clear sense of, I'm in week 3 of module 2, and by week 8, I'll know this. Instead, you're drowning. YouTube playlists multiply like weeds. Podcasts pile up, books sit half-read, online courses gather digital dust in your browser tabs. You tell yourself you're learning, but deep down, you know the truth. You're just consuming. And consumption without direction isn't education, it's noise. This chapter names the problem you've been living with but couldn't quite articulate. It's the missing syllabus of adulthood. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The content swamp. Look at your phone right now. How many unread articles are saved? How many courses have you started and abandoned? How many newsletters do you skim but never act on? You're not lazy. You're not undisciplined. You're stuck in the content swamp, a place where endless information creates the illusion of progress while keeping you exactly where you are. The swamp works like this. You watch a video on productivity. It's good. You feel inspired. You save 3 more videos for later. You read an article about learning strategies. You bookmark it. You sign up for a course. You watch the first 2 lessons. Then life happens. A week passes. You forget where you left off. The guilt sets in. So you start something new, a different course, a different book, a different guru. The cycle repeats. Here's what's happening. You're hopping from resource to resource, mistaking motion for momentum. Each new piece of content feels like progress because it's novel, because it's interesting, because it promises transformation. But without a structure to hold it all together, without a plan that says this piece fits here and that piece comes next, you're just collecting. Not learning, not building, just collecting. And the worst part? More information without structure doesn't clarify, it paralyzes. Every new resource whispers, maybe this is the one that finally clicks. Every new framework promises to be the missing piece, but they all just add to the pile. The anxiety grows, the paralysis deepens. You're busier than ever, but you're not moving forward. When consumption masquerades as learning, let's get brutally honest. Taking notes doesn't mean you're learning. Highlighting passages doesn't mean you're growing. Saving articles doesn't mean you're building skills. These are the rituals of learning, not the substance. Real learning, the kind that changes your career, your confidence, your capabilities, requires direction and application. It requires knowing why you're studying something, where it fits in your larger plan, and how you'll use it. Without that, you're just a passive consumer. You're Netflix binging education. Think about it. When was the last time you could point to a skill you deliberately built from start to finish? Not something you picked up accidentally at work. Not something you dabbled in. A skill you designed a learning path for, followed through on, and can now demonstrate with real outputs. If you're struggling to answer, you're not alone. Most people can't. This confusion, mistaking consumption for curriculum, keeps your skills shallow, replaceable. You know a little about a lot, but you can't go deep enough to be dangerous. You can talk the talk in meetings, but when it's time to actually do the thing, you hesitate. You Google, you second guess, because you never truly learned it. You just consumed content about it. The syllabus you lost. Remember school? Say what you want about the system, but it gave you something precious. A syllabus. Week 1, you covered this. Week 5, you hit that milestone. Week 12, you took the exam. You knew where you were. You knew what was next. You knew when you were done. Then you graduated, and the syllabus disappeared. Adult life handed you freedom, the freedom to learn anything, anytime, anywhere. But it forgot to mention that freedom without structure is just chaos. Your brain still needs goals. It still needs modules. It still needs a sense of progression. It still needs to know, am I moving forward or am I just spinning? Nobody is coming to give you that syllabus, not your boss, not some online guru, not the algorithm. If you want structure, you have to build it yourself. You have to become the dean of your own tiny university, designing terms, choosing courses, setting milestones, and holding yourself accountable. This is the hidden syllabus problem, and it's why you feel stuck. The slow erosion. If you keep going like this, random learning, scattered effort, no plan, here's what happens. Your career plateaus. Not because you're not smart, not because you're not trying, but because general smartness without visible focused skill stacks doesn't move you up. Promotions go to people with clear expertise. Opportunities go to people who can point to real projects and say, I built this. Meanwhile, you watch others, people who might be less naturally talented, race past you. They're not smarter, they're just more focused. They picked a lane, they built something, they have proof. And the self-doubt, it compounds. Every scroll through LinkedIn shows someone launching something, learning something, achieving something. Every course ad feels urgent. Every new framework feels like the thing you're missing. You're constantly behind, constantly scattered, constantly wondering if you're on the right path. Because you're not on a path. You're on 20 paths at once, and none of them are taking you anywhere. The emotional weight of abandoned books and courses piles up. You start strong, always start strong, then quietly quit. Again and again. Each time, your self-trust erodes a little more. You start to wonder, maybe I'm just not that kind of person. Maybe I'm not built for this. But that's a lie. You're not undisciplined, you're just understructured. What happens if you do nothing? Let's fast forward. 5 years from now, you're still consuming, still hopping, still starting and stopping. Your skills don't compound, they reset. Every new topic feels like starting from scratch because you never went deep enough to build on anything. Your knowledge stays fragmented, hard to access, hard to use. You miss strategic opportunities. When a bigger role opens up, you can't say yes because you don't have the focused capabilities it requires. When specialized knowledge is needed, you're overlooked. You stay boxed into your current identity longer than you want, not because you lack potential, but because you lack proof. And slowly, quietly, you lower your standards. You aim smaller. You tell yourself stories. I'm too busy. I'm not technical enough. I'm not creative enough. Maybe I'm just not that kind of person. Each story is a small surrender. Each surrender makes the next one easier. This is what happens when you let the missing syllabus problem go unchallenged. You don't fail spectacularly. You just fade, slowly, imperceptibly. Until one day you look up and realize you're exactly where you were 5 years ago, just older, more tired, and less hopeful. The promise. But here's the good news. This book gives you the syllabus, a repeatable system for designing your own adult semester around any skill you care about. Not vague advice, not motivational fluff. A concrete, build-it-yourself curriculum that recreates the best of school, clarity, progression, milestones, without the worst. By the time you finish this book, you'll be able to design one complete learning term, 6 to 12 weeks, a single major goal, 2 to 4 clearly named courses, a lean, focused resource list, a visible project that proves what you've learned, start and end dates, milestones on your calendar, everything you need to stop drifting and start building. And if you keep doing this term after term, you'll build a stacked skill portfolio, layered, complementary, resilient. You'll develop a recognizable personal brand. You'll open doors, speaking, teaching, leading, creating. Most importantly, you'll trust yourself again. You'll know you can learn anything important on your own. Your method becomes your advantage. Winners design, losers drift. There are two kinds of people in the world of self-education: winners and losers. Not in talent, not in intelligence, in mindset. Losers collect. They hoard courses, newsletters, and notes. They start strong and quit quietly. They blame motivation. They wait for life to calm down. They stay stuck in someday. Winners design. They see themselves as architects of their own learning. They treat time and attention like scarce capital to invest. They test systems. They refine. They commit. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They create structure and act inside it. You get to choose which side you're on. Right now, this chapter, this moment. From here forward, you're not a passive student hoping the algorithm serves you the right content. You're the dean of your own lifelong university. You design the curriculum. You choose the courses. You set the standards. You decide what mastery looks like. The next chapter, Own Your Identity, will show you exactly how to define who you're becoming and what your multi-year learning roadmap looks like. But that only works if you've made the decision. If you've chosen to be a designer, not a drifter. The hidden syllabus isn't hidden anymore. You see it now. The question is, what will you do about it? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Own Your Identity. Here's a question that will tell you everything about why your learning feels scattered. Who are you becoming? Not who you are right now, not your job title, not the role you play at work or the labels others have stuck on you. Who are you becoming? What does the person you're building toward actually look like? What do they know? What can they do? What doors are open to them that are closed to you today? If you can't answer that in one clear sentence, you're learning blind. And learning blind is why you keep starting courses you never finish, why every new skill feels equally urgent, and why you can't shake the feeling that you're busy but going nowhere. This chapter is about something deeper than goals or plans. It's about claiming an identity, on purpose, with intention, and letting that identity become the invisible hand that guides every learning decision you make. The power you're not using. Most people think learning is about motivation. Find the right spark, the right reason, the right moment of inspiration, and you'll finally follow through. But that's not how behavior works. Behavior follows identity, not the other way around. Think about it. Someone who sees themselves as a runner doesn't need to convince themselves to run. They just do. It's what runners do. Someone who identifies as a writer writes. Not because they're more disciplined than you, because writing is consistent with who they believe they are. When you say, I should learn more, you're speaking from outside the identity. You're a spectator, watching yourself fail to do the thing you think you should do. But when you say, I am a lifelong learner, something shifts. You're not hoping to become that person someday. You're claiming it now. And once you claim it, your brain starts looking for ways to make it true. This is the difference between drifting and designing. Drifters hope, designers decide. Athletes don't wake up wondering if they'll train today. Artists don't negotiate with themselves about whether to create. Entrepreneurs don't question whether to build. They've locked in the identity, and the actions flow from there. You can do the same thing with learning. But first, you have to know who you're becoming. Why vision isn't optional. Let's say you decide right now that you're a lifelong learner. Great, but a lifelong learner of what? Toward what end? For what future? Without a clear picture of where you're headed, everything looks equally important. Every course ad whispers, this could be the one. Every new framework feels urgent. Every skill someone else is learning makes you wonder if you're missing out. You end up chasing everything and mastering nothing. Vision creates direction. It's the difference between wandering through a library, grabbing random books, and walking in with a list, knowing exactly what you need and why. A clear picture of future you, 3 to 5 years out, simplifies every choice. Does this course move me toward that future? No? Then it's noise. Vague goals create vague plans. Get better at business leads nowhere. Lead a product team at a high-growth startup gives you a target. Now you know what to learn. Leadership, product thinking, systems design, communication. The path becomes visible because the destination is clear. And here's the kicker. Once you have that vision, you gain something even more valuable than direction. You gain a filter, a way to say no without guilt, a way to ignore 90% of the content swamp and focus on the 10% that actually matters. Your roadmap is your weapon. Think of your learning like a portfolio of investments. You wouldn't throw money at every stock that sounds interesting. You'd choose a strategy. You'd diversify intentionally. You'd track what's working and cut what's not. Your skills are the same, they're assets, and the lifelong curriculum roadmap is how you manage them. Here's what that means in practice. You're going to identify 3 to 5 big outcomes, concrete, observable results you want in the next 3 to 5 years. Not wishes, not vague aspirations, outcomes, things you can point to and say, I did that. Then you're going to reverse engineer those outcomes into learning domains, broad areas of knowledge and skill that when stacked together make those outcomes inevitable. Maybe it's people, leadership, communication, influence. Maybe it's systems, operations, automation, design thinking. Maybe it's story, writing, presenting, persuasion. Whatever it is, you're choosing deliberately. You're building a portfolio. And once you have that roadmap, one page, visual, simple, you have a filter. Every book, every course, every opportunity gets measured against it. Does this fit? Does this move me closer to one of my domains? No? Then it's a distraction, no matter how shiny it looks. This is how you stop being a collector and start being a builder. The myths that keep you stuck. Before we go further, let's kill 3 myths that are probably running in the background of your mind right now. Myth 1. If I just follow my curiosity, the path will appear. No, it won't. Curiosity is fuel, not a map. It's the spark that makes learning enjoyable, but without a container, without direction, it just scatters. You end up interested in everything and committed to nothing. Curiosity needs a roadmap. It needs to be harnessed inside a chosen direction, not used as an excuse to drift. Myth 2. My job title defines my learning path. Maybe it does right now, but your title is a snapshot, not your destiny. If you let your current role box in your learning identity, you'll stay stuck in that box. The whole point of designing your own curriculum is to give yourself leverage beyond your current position, to build skills that open doors you can't even see yet. Myth 3. If I commit to a vision, I'm locked in forever. Wrong. Vision is a compass, not a contract. It points you in a direction. It keeps you from spinning in circles. But it's not rigid. High performers adjust tactics constantly. They just don't change the destination every week. You can refine, you can evolve, you just can't drift. Building your future you. Here's where theory becomes practice. Grab something to write with. You're going to do a simple exercise that will change how you see your learning from this moment forward. Imagine yourself 3 to 5 years from now. Not in some fantasy world where everything is perfect, in the real world, but a version where you've been deliberate, where you've built the skills that matter, where you've followed through. Describe a typical day. What work are you doing? Who are you working with? What are you proud of when you look back at the past few years? What kind of problems are you solving? What opportunities are available to you now that weren't before? Write it out. A paragraph, maybe 2. Be specific. Don't just say, I'm successful. Define what success looks like in concrete terms. Are you leading a team, running your own thing, creating work that gets recognized, earning autonomy, building something that lasts? Now look at what you wrote. What themes keep showing up? Creation, leadership, autonomy, influence, impact. Those themes are clues. They're pointing you toward your outcomes. Take those themes and turn them into 3 to 5 concrete outcomes. Not tasks, results. Lead a product team. Launch a profitable side business. Build a portfolio that opens doors. Earn location independence. Whatever it is, make it specific. Make it observable. Make it something that when you achieve it, you'll know. And here's the test. Each outcome should excite you and scare you a little. If it doesn't, you're playing too small. From outcomes to domains. Now comes the translation. Each outcome requires certain skills, certain knowledge, certain capabilities. Your job is to group those into broad learning domains. Let's say one of your outcomes is lead a product team. What does that require? People skills, leadership, communication, influence, conflict resolution. System skills, product thinking, prioritization, road mapping, data literacy. Story skills, presenting, persuading, writing clearly. You start to see the domains emerge. Do this for each outcome. Then look for overlap. Where do multiple outcomes point to the same domain? Those are your high leverage areas. Those are the ones that deserve your focus first. You're aiming for 3 to 5 domains total, not 10, not 20, 3 to 5. Each one gets a short, memorable label, something you can say out loud without sounding like a corporate training manual. People, systems, story, creation, strategy. Keep it simple, keep it real. And here's the critical part. Every domain has to pull its weight. No vague extras, no nice-to-haves. If a domain doesn't clearly connect to at least one of your big outcomes, cut it. Park it in a future semester's list and move on. What you're left with is your lifelong curriculum roadmap. One page, visual, clear, a map of who you're becoming and what you need to learn to get there. Making it stick. A roadmap you never look at is worthless. So here's how you make it real. First, keep your identity statement short. One sentence, conversational, something you can say out loud without cringing. I am the kind of person who builds skills deliberately and ships real work. Test it. If it feels fake, soften it. I am becoming the kind of person who, that's fine, just make it yours. Second, put your roadmap somewhere you'll see it every day. Your wall, your desktop, the cover of your journal. Make it visible. Color code the domains if that helps. Pair it with a simple mantra you repeat before learning sessions. The point is to keep it alive in your mind, not buried in a file somewhere. Third, review your identity monthly. Set a calendar reminder. Ask yourself, is this still who I want to become? Most of the time, the answer will be yes. You'll adjust intensity, not direction. But if life circumstances truly change, if your values shift, if new opportunities appear, you're allowed to evolve the roadmap. Just do it consciously, not every week, not reactively, deliberately. What winning looks like. If you do this right, 3 things happen. First, you'll start using your roadmap to say no. At least once a week, you'll decline a course, skip a newsletter, ignore a trend because it doesn't serve your domains. And you'll feel proud, not guilty, because you're not missing out, you're staying focused. Second, your learning choices will start clustering. You'll notice patterns. Oh, I'm spending most of my time in these 2 domains right now. That makes sense given my current outcome. The randomness disappears. The coherence builds. Third, other people will start describing you with the identity you chose. You're our go-to for X. You always seem to know about Y. Your reputation shifts. Opportunities appear that match your roadmap. Projects, roles, collaborations. Not by accident, by design. And when that happens, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Direction. Deep, unshakable direction. Even when the path is hard, you'll know you're on the right one. But identity and vision are just the foundation. They tell you who you're becoming and why you're learning. They don't tell you what to focus on next. That's a different problem, a harder one. Because in the age of infinite content, choosing what not to learn is the real skill. And that's exactly what the next chapter is about. Chapter 3, Choosing Focus. You have your identity. You have your roadmap. You know who you're becoming and what domains matter. So why does it still feel impossible to decide what to learn right now? Because knowing your direction and actually choosing your next step are two different problems. One is strategic, the other is surgical, and most people fail at the second one, even when they've nailed the first. Here's what happens. You look at your roadmap and see 3, maybe 5 domains that all matter: leadership, systems thinking, communication, data literacy, creative work, all legitimate, all useful, all connected to your future. So you tell yourself, I'll work on all of them. You grab a book on leadership, a course on data, a podcast series on systems. You're covering your bases, you're being thorough. And 6 weeks later, you've made invisible progress in all of them. You're a little smarter, sure, but you can't point to anything. You can't demonstrate a new capability. You can't say, I can do this now, and I couldn't before. You're stuck in the everything bucket, and the everything bucket is where ambition goes to die. This chapter is about the hardest decision in self-education: what to ignore. Not forever, just for now, because attention is your scarcest resource, and if you don't guard it like a miser, you'll spend it like a fool. The trap of doing everything. Let's be clear about what's happening when you try to learn everything at once. You're not being ambitious, you're being afraid. Afraid of missing out, afraid of choosing wrong, afraid that if you focus on one thing, you'll fall behind in another. So you hedge. You spread your effort thin across multiple domains, hoping that somehow, magically, it will all compound. It won't. Here's why. Progress is only visible when it's concentrated. When you put 10 hours into one skill, you see movement. You feel different. You can do something you couldn't do before. But when you put 2 hours into 5 different skills, nothing moves enough to matter. You're busy, you're learning, but you're not building. And the emotional toll? It's brutal. You're always behind in every domain, always feeling like you should be doing more, always guilty about the areas you're neglecting. The everything bucket doesn't give you safety. It gives you chronic anxiety and shallow skills. Focus, on the other hand, gives you something rare: visible expertise. When you go deep in one area, people notice. They start associating you with that thing. They trust you. They come to you. And here's the paradox. Depth in one area often unlocks breadth later. Because once you've proven you can master something, once you've built the confidence in the process, every new domain gets easier. But you have to choose. And choosing means sacrifice. Where curiosity meets usefulness. So how do you choose? Not randomly, not by gut feel, not by whatever sounds interesting this week. You choose at the intersection of 2 forces: curiosity and usefulness. Curiosity is the fuel. It's what makes learning feel alive instead of like a chore. If you pick a topic purely because you should learn it, because it's trendy, because everyone else is doing it, because it looks good on a resume, you'll quit. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually, when the novelty wears off and the work gets hard, you'll drift. Usefulness is the payoff. It's what makes learning worth the effort. If you pick a topic purely because it's interesting but it doesn't move your life forward, you're just entertaining yourself. You're collecting trivia. You're not building leverage. The magic happens where these two overlap, where you're genuinely curious and the skill will meaningfully change your trajectory. That's your sweet spot. That's where you should be spending your time. Think about it like this. Imagine a simple grid. One axis is interest, how much you actually care about this topic. The other axis is usefulness, how much mastering this would change your life or career. Now plot every potential learning topic you're considering. Some will land in high interest, low usefulness, fun but not strategic. Some will land in low interest, high usefulness, important but you'll hate every minute. Some will land in low interest, low usefulness. Why are you even considering these? And some, the precious few, will land in high interest, high usefulness. Those are your candidates. But even then, you're not done, because not all useful skills are created equal. The skills that spill over. Here's a question that will save you years of wasted effort. where else will this skill pay dividends? Some skills are narrow. They solve one problem in one context. They're useful, sure, but they don't transfer. You learn them, you use them in that specific situation, and that's it. Other skills are wide. They spill over. They show up everywhere. You learn them once, and they pay off in 10 different contexts. Communication is like this. Systems thinking is like this. Data literacy is like this. These aren't just skills, they're meta skills. They make everything else you do more effective. They compound across roles, projects, industries. They're the difference between learning something that helps you in your current job and learning something that reshapes your entire career. So when you're choosing your focus, ask, where else will this matter? If the answer is only in this one narrow situation, think twice. If the answer is everywhere I go for the next decade, you found gold. This doesn't mean you should only learn transferable skills. Sometimes you need something specific. Sometimes the narrow skill is exactly what unlocks the next opportunity. But when you're deciding where to invest your limited attention, transferability tips the scales. It's the difference between a good bet and a great one. The lies you tell yourself. Before you start choosing, let's kill 3 myths that are probably running in your head right now. Myth 1. More topics means more opportunity. No. More topics means more confusion. It means you're a generalist in a world that rewards specialists. It means your reputation is vague and your impact is diluted. Yes, breadth matters, but not breadth for its own sake. Targeted, staged breadth, where you go deep in one area, then add another, beats scattered effort every time. Myth 2. If I niche down, I'll get bored. This one's sneaky because it sounds reasonable. But here's the truth. Depth reveals layers. When you go deep, you don't find repetition. You find complexity. You find nuance. You find subtopics and experiments and questions you didn't even know existed. Boredom comes from staying shallow, not from going deep. And if you're genuinely curious, you can build variety inside a focused domain. You don't need to jump to a completely different field to stay engaged. Myth 3. I must choose perfectly or I'll be stuck forever. This is perfectionism dressed up as caution, and it's a stalling tactic. You're not choosing your final identity, you're choosing your next focus. 4 to 12 weeks. That's it. If it doesn't work, you adjust, you pivot, you try something else. The whole point of designing your own curriculum is that you're running experiments, not signing contracts. Stop waiting for the perfect choice. Start testing. How to actually decide. Enough theory. Here's how you do it. Take out a piece of paper, draw a simple grid, interest on one axis, usefulness on the other. Now list every topic you're considering for your next term. Be honest, don't filter yet. Just get them all out. Now place each topic in the grid. Where does it land? High interest, high usefulness? That's your starting pool. Everything else, set it aside for now. Next, take your high interest, high usefulness candidates and run them through the transferability lens. For each one, ask, where else will this skill matter? How many different contexts will it show up in? Score them, rank them. The ones with both depth and spread rise to the top. Now comes the hard part. Choose one, not 3, not 5. One primary domain for your next term. This is your main focus. This is where the majority of your learning time goes. Why one? Because you need concentration to see progress. Because you need to feel the win of actually getting good at something. Because scattered effort produces scattered results, and you've been scattered long enough. Once you've chosen your primary domain, break it into 3 to 5 subskills, specific, trainable, measurable pieces. If your domain is communication, your subskills might be writing clearly, presenting with confidence, facilitating discussions, storytelling for influence. If your domain is systems thinking, your subskills might be mapping processes, identifying leverage points, designing feedback loops, simplifying complexity. Write these down. Then write a short why this, why now statement. 1 paragraph. This locks in your commitment. It reminds you, when the shiny new course appears next week, why you chose this focus and why it matters. Finally, decide what enough looks like. What's the minimum effective curriculum for this term? What's the smallest set of subskills that would still create meaningful change? This is your guardrail. It keeps you from bloating your plan with every interesting tangent. It keeps you lean. It keeps you moving. If you crave variety, if the idea of focusing on one domain for 12 weeks makes you twitchy, fine. Add one elective, one small, interest-driven side project. But cap it, strictly, 10% of your time, max. The rest goes to your primary focus. Making it real. Here's how you make this stick. First, commit to a 30-day test. You're not marrying this focus. You're dating it, 30 days. At the end, evaluate. Did your energy stay high? Did you make visible progress? Does the payoff still look real? If yes, deepen. If no, pivot. But don't quit in week 2 because it got hard. Give it a real shot. Second, keep a parking lot list. Every time a new topic tempts you, every time you see a course ad or read an article that makes you think, I should learn that, write it down. Capture it, but don't act on it. Not now. Reassure your brain that nothing is lost, just deferred. You'll review this list when you're planning your next term, not midterm, not when you're supposed to be focused. Third, name your focus clearly. Use concrete language, storytelling for product managers, data literacy for decision-making, leadership for first-time managers, not get better at business, not improve communication. Vague names lead to vague effort. Specific names create specific action. And here's a trick that works better than it should. Share your focus statement with one person, a friend, a colleague, someone who will ask you about it later. The act of saying it out loud, of making it public, increases commitment. It makes backing out harder. It makes following through easier. What winning looks like. If you do this right, 3 things happen over the next term. First, you notice deeper understanding, not surface-level familiarity, real comprehension. You start seeing patterns, making connections, applying concepts without having to look them up. You feel the difference between dabbling and building. Second, you can explain what you're learning and why, clearly, confidently, without hedging. When someone asks what you're working on, you don't mumble something vague. You say, I'm focusing on X because it unlocks Y, and they get it, and they respect it. Third, you experience less guilt. You skip courses, you ignore trends, you say no to opportunities that don't fit, and instead of feeling like you're missing out, you feel like you're staying on track, because you are. And if you keep doing this, if you make focused, deliberate choices term after term, you start to be known for something. Not that person who knows a little about everything, but that person who really understands X. Opportunities appear that match your skill set, projects, roles, collaborations, not by accident, by design. But focus is only half the battle. You can choose the right domain, break it into perfect subskills, and still fail if you don't solve the next problem. Time. Because knowing what to learn means nothing if you never actually sit down and do the work. And that's where most people fall apart. Chapter 4, Time Architecture. You know what you're learning. You know why it matters. You've chosen your focus with surgical precision, and yet, 3 weeks from now, you'll probably be exactly where you are today. Not because you lack commitment, not because you chose wrong, but because you never put it on your calendar. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A curriculum that lives only in your head is a fantasy. It's a wish list. It's something you'll get to when things calm down, and things never calm down. Time doesn't appear. It doesn't magically open up. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Time is designed, architected, built into your week like the foundation of a house. And if you don't build it deliberately, someone else will fill it for you. Your boss, your inbox, your phone, the algorithm. They're all competing for the same resource, and they're better at grabbing it than you are. This chapter is about something most people never do, treating learning like it's as important as work, as non-negotiable as sleep, as real as any other commitment on your calendar. It's about creating what I call time architecture, a structure that turns vague intention into predictable, scheduled action. And once you have it, everything changes. Your calendar is telling the truth. Look at your calendar right now. What does it say about you? What does it reveal about your priorities? If learning isn't on there, If there are no recurring blocks labeled study, practice, project work, then learning isn't a priority. It's a hope, and hopes don't survive contact with reality. Your current schedule is already a curriculum. It's just not one you designed. It's one that emerged from 1,000 small decisions, 1,000 moments of saying yes to other people's urgencies and no to your own growth. Meetings, errands, scrolling, reacting. That's the curriculum you're following right now, and it's teaching you to stay exactly where you are. The shift happens when you realize that your calendar is a moral document. It shows what you truly value, not what you say you value. And if you want learning to be real, if you want it to actually happen, it has to be written in, scheduled, protected, treated like an appointment with your future self that you wouldn't dream of canceling. Without time, plans die. It's that simple. You can have the perfect roadmap, the sharpest focus, the best resources. But if you don't block the hours, if you don't create the containers, none of it matters. You'll keep telling yourself, I'll get to it this weekend, and the weekend will come and go, and you'll feel guilty, and nothing will change. Why structure wins? Here's what most people get wrong about discipline. They think it's about willpower, about forcing yourself to do hard things through sheer mental strength. And sure, willpower plays a role, but willpower is a terrible foundation. It's unreliable. It depletes. It fails you exactly when you need it most, at the end of a long day, when you're tired, when Netflix is right there. Structure, on the other hand, doesn't rely on willpower. It relies on pre-commitment, on decisions made once that eliminate the need to decide again. When you block Tuesday and Thursday evenings for learning, you're not negotiating with yourself every Tuesday and Thursday about whether to study. You're just following the plan. The decision was already made. The friction is gone. This is how professionals in every field operate. They don't wait for motivation. They don't rely on inspiration. They build routines. They create systems. They show up at the same time, in the same place, and do the work. Not because they feel like it, because it's what they do. Consistent, modest effort beats occasional heroic effort every single time. The person who studies for 30 minutes 3 times a week will outpace the person who crams for 6 hours once a month. Because learning isn't about intensity. It's about repetition. It's about showing up. It's about giving your brain time to process, consolidate, and integrate. And here's the part nobody talks about. Structure creates peace. When you have clear learning slots on your calendar, you stop feeling guilty about not learning during the rest of your time. You're not constantly asking yourself, should I be studying right now? You know when you're studying. You know when you're not. The boundaries protect rest as much as they protect work. And that clarity, that knowing when instead of constantly asking if, is worth more than you think. Building your term. So how do you actually do this? How do you take the abstract idea of learning more and turn it into a real functioning schedule? You start by thinking in terms, not years, not vague someday timelines, terms, semesters, defined periods with clear start and end dates. Choose a length, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. The right answer depends on your life context. 6 weeks is intense. It's a sprint. It works when you need to build momentum fast or when you're testing a new focus. 12 weeks gives you depth. It's long enough to go from beginner to competent, to finish real projects, to see meaningful change. 8 weeks is the middle ground. Enough time to matter, short enough to maintain urgency. Pick one, then mark it on your calendar. Actual dates. Term starts March 1st. Term ends May 24th. Treat it like a real course, because it is. You're the student and the professor, and this term is as legitimate as anything you did in school. Now add a midterm checkpoint. Week 4 or week 6, depending on your length. This is when you pause, review, and adjust. Not to beat yourself up, not to quit, to course correct, to see what's working and what's not, to make the second half better than the first. This simple act, defining a term with real dates, changes everything. Suddenly, your learning has a container. It has boundaries. It has a finish line. And your brain loves finish lines. They create urgency. They make procrastination harder. They turn someday into by May 24th. Designing your weekly rhythm. A term is the big container, but you live in weeks, so your weekly rhythm is where the real work happens. You need 3 to 5 recurring learning blocks, not random, not whenever I have time. Recurring, same days, same times, predictable. Start by identifying windows that could work. Early mornings before work, evenings after dinner, weekend mornings, lunch breaks. Look at your existing schedule and find the gaps, not the theoretical gaps, the real ones, the times when you're actually available and your energy is decent. Now assign each block a purpose. Don't just label them all study. Be specific. One block is for deep reading. One is for practice and application. One is for project work. One is for review and reflection. Different types of learning require different mental states, and matching the task to your energy level makes everything easier. And here's the critical part. Protect these blocks like you'd protect a meeting with your boss. They're appointments with your future self, and your future self is counting on you to show up. Will you miss some? Yes, life happens, but the goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. If you hit 80% of your planned sessions over a term, you're winning. If you're hitting 50%, you're still making real progress. The people who fail are the ones who never block the time in the first place. Sprints and seasons. Not all weeks are created equal. Some weeks, you need to push. You're hitting a milestone. You're finishing a project. You're preparing for something real. These are sprint weeks. You dial up the intensity. You add extra sessions. You lower other commitments where possible. You go hard. Other weeks, you're sustaining. You're building the foundation. You're reading, practicing, reflecting. These are season weeks, steady, consistent, not heroic, just showing up and doing the work. The mistake most people make is trying to sprint all the time. They design a schedule that requires peak effort every single week, and it works for a while, until it doesn't, until they burn out, until they miss a week, and the guilt spiral starts. Smart learners alternate. They pick 1 or 2 weeks in a term as sprints, usually tied to major milestones or capstone pushes. The rest are seasons, and after every sprint, they schedule a lighter week, a recovery week, a week where the volume drops but the consistency stays. This isn't slacking, it's strategic. It's how you sustain effort over months and years instead of burning bright and flaming out. The lies that kill momentum. Before you start building your time architecture, let's kill 3 myths that are probably running in your head. Myth 1. I'll learn whenever I have free time. No, you won't. Free time is a myth. It's already filled by default activities, by low-friction habits, by whatever's easiest in the moment. Learning is high friction. It requires focus. It requires effort. It doesn't happen in the cracks. It happens when you pre-commit, when you create the time instead of waiting for it. Myth 2. Long marathons beat short sessions. They don't. Marathons are rare. They're hard to schedule. They're exhausting, and they're terrible for retention. Research shows that spaced, shorter sessions, 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there, produce better long-term learning than occasional 6-hour binges. Treat marathons as bonuses, nice when they happen, but not the foundation. Myth 3. My schedule is too chaotic to plan anything. This is the most dangerous one because it sounds reasonable, and for some people, life genuinely is chaotic. But here's the truth. Some structure is almost always possible, even if it's imperfect, even if it's just 3 20-minute blocks a week, even if you have to use micro-sprints during intense periods and rebuild later. The excuse of chaos is often just that, an excuse, a way to avoid the discomfort of committing, making it stick. Here's how you make your time architecture real instead of theoretical. First, tie your learning blocks to existing anchors, stable daily events that already happen, after work, before bed, Saturday mornings. Use if-then rules. If it's 7 p.m. on Tuesday, I sit at my desk to learn. This reduces decision fatigue. You're not deciding whether to study, you're following a pattern. Second, reduce friction. Keep your materials ready. Book on the desk, notebook open, laptop charged. The easier it is to start, the more likely you are to actually do it. Every extra step, finding the book, opening the app, deciding where to sit, is a chance to quit before you begin. Third, use visual and digital cues. Color code your learning blocks on your calendar so they stand out. Set reminders with encouraging messages you write to yourself. Place a physical cue, a book, a notebook, where you'll see it at the right time. These small nudges matter more than you think. And here's the trick that saves most people. Start smaller than you think you need to. If your schedule is tight, begin with 20 or 30-minute blocks. Not because that's ideal, but because consistency beats duration. 3 short sessions you actually complete are worth more than 1 long session you keep postponing. You can always stretch later, but you have to build the habit first. What success looks like. If you do this right, 3 things happen. First, you complete most of your planned sessions, not all, but most, 80% or more, and you stop feeling stressed about finding time because the time is already there, already allocated, already protected. Second, learning becomes part of your weekly rhythm, like work, like sleep, like any other non-negotiable part of your life. Your friends and colleagues start to see it as part of who you are. Oh, Tuesday nights, that's when you study. It's not a phase, it's not a project, it's just what you do. Third, you can confidently plan future terms because you know your realistic capacity. You know how much you can actually handle. You're not guessing. You're not being overly optimistic. You're designing based on evidence, based on what you've proven you can sustain. And when that happens, you stop being someone who wants to learn more. You become someone who learns consistently, deliberately, relentlessly. But time architecture is only the container. It tells you when to learn. It doesn't tell you what to study or how to structure the actual content. That's a different problem, a design problem. And it's what separates people who show up from people who actually build something real. Chapter 5, Design Your Courses. You've blocked the time. You know when you're learning. But here's the question that stops most people cold. What are you actually doing during those blocks? Learning marketing isn't an answer. It's a vague gesture toward a massive field. Getting better at communication tells you nothing about where to start or when you're done. These aren't courses. They're wishes. And wishes don't create the clarity you need to show up on Tuesday night and know exactly what to do. This chapter is about turning those vague topics into something real, something structured, something that feels as legitimate as any course you took in school, except this one is designed by you, for you, around the exact skills that will move your life forward. The secret? Names and structure create commitment. When you label something Course 1, Storytelling for Product Managers, your brain treats it differently than some reading about communication. It becomes real. It becomes accountable. It becomes something you can finish. Why vague kills momentum? Let's start with why most self-directed learning fails. It's not lack of resources. It's not lack of time. It's lack of definition. When you say, I'm learning marketing, what does that even mean? Marketing is enormous. It's strategy, copywriting, analytics, SEO, paid ads, brand positioning, customer psychology, funnel design, content creation, and 50 other subfields. Saying you're learning marketing is like saying you're learning science. Where do you start? Where do you stop? How do you know if you're making progress? You don't. So you hop around. You read an article about SEO. You watch a video about copywriting. You take notes on brand strategy. Each piece is interesting. Each piece feels productive, but nothing connects. Nothing builds. You're collecting fragments, not constructing knowledge. Now imagine you're taking a course called Writing Landing Pages That Convert. Suddenly, everything sharpens. You know what you're learning. You know why it matters. You know what done looks like. You can measure progress. You can point to outputs. You can say, I finished that course, and here's what I built. That's the difference between vague and concrete concrete wins every time. The motivational power of a real course, with a title, a syllabus, a finish line, is massive. It gives you something to commit to, something to complete, something to be proud of. And when you finish, it doesn't just disappear into your memory. It becomes a portfolio item. Evidence, proof that you didn't just consume content, you built a skill. The resource trap. Here's the trap everyone falls into. You decide to learn something, so you start collecting resources. You find a highly rated book, then another one, then a course, then a podcast series, then a YouTube playlist. Before you know it, you have 20 resources for one topic, and you tell yourself, "Great, I'm prepared." You're not prepared. You're overwhelmed. More resources don't equal more learning. They equal more confusion, more decision fatigue, more guilt when you can't possibly get through them all. You end up paralyzed, staring at the pile, not sure where to start, so you start nothing. Deliberate course design forces you to choose, to cut, to say this resource is in, that one is out. It's uncomfortable. It feels like you're leaving value on the table. But here's the truth. Saying no to most resources is how you master the few that matter. You don't need 10 books on the same topic. You need one great book that you actually finish and apply. You don't need every expert's perspective. You need a clear path through the material that matches your current level and gets you to your goal. This is what designing a course does. It imposes constraints. It forces clarity. It turns the infinite content swamp into a finite, manageable curriculum. From subskills to courses. So how do you actually do this? How do you take a domain like communication or systems thinking and turn it into courses you can complete? You start with subskills, specific trainable pieces of the larger domain. If your domain is communication, your subskills might be writing clearly, presenting with confidence, facilitating discussions, storytelling for influence. If your domain is data literacy, your subskills might be reading charts, building dashboards, asking better questions with data, communicating insights. Take your domain focus from the previous chapter and extract 3 to 5 key subskills. Be specific. Leadership is too broad. Running effective one-on-ones is a subskill. Product management is too broad. Writing user stories is a subskill. Now turn each subskill into a course. Give it a real title, not Communication 101, not Leadership Basics, something outcome-oriented, something that tells you exactly what you'll be able to do when you're done. Writing emails that get responses, building dashboards for decision-making, facilitating meetings that don't waste time, storytelling for technical audiences. These are courses. They have boundaries, they have outcomes, they feel real. Add a 1 or 2 sentence description for each course. Who is it for? What will you be able to do? This isn't busy work, it's clarity. It's the difference between drifting through material and moving toward a specific destination. The one primary text rule. Here's where most people sabotage themselves. They try to use 5 main resources at once. They're reading 3 books, taking 2 courses, watching a video series, and listening to a podcast, all on the same topic, all at the same time. Stop. Choose one primary resource per course. 1. This is your spine, your anchor, the thing you commit to finishing. Everything else is supplementary. Why? Because juggling multiple main resources creates chaos. You lose your place. You forget what you've covered. You can't build momentum because you're constantly context switching. And worst of all, you never finish anything. You're always halfway through 5 things instead of done with 1. Your primary resource should cover most of the course scope. It should be reasonably paced. It should be practical, not purely theoretical. And once you choose it, you commit. You don't switch mid-course because you found something shinier. You finish what you started. This doesn't mean you ignore everything else. It means you're clear about hierarchy. One resource is primary. Everything else supports it. Now add 2 to 4 supporting resources. These are complementary. They offer different perspectives. They fill gaps. They reinforce concepts in different formats. Maybe it's a few key articles. Maybe it's a short video series. Maybe it's a tool or template you'll use for practice. Label each supporting resource by difficulty: foundational, intermediate, advanced. Make sure your stack includes at least 1 accessible entry point and 1 stretch resource. The accessible one builds confidence. The stretch one pushes you. Together, they create the right learning zone. Challenging, but not crushing. Defining done. Here's a question that will save you from endless wandering. What does done mean for this course? Most people never answer this. They just keep consuming until they get bored or distracted. They never finish. They never close the loop. They never get the psychological win of completion. You need completion criteria: specific, measurable, observable. For each course, define 3 things. First, content goals. What will you consume? Read chapters 1 through 7, watch all 12 videos, complete the first 4 modules. Be specific, write it down. Second, practice goals. What will you do with the knowledge? Write 10 practice emails, build 3 sample dashboards, facilitate 2 mock meetings. Learning isn't just consumption, it's application, and application is what makes it stick. Third, one visible artifact, something you can show, a report, a presentation, a portfolio piece, a demo, something that proves you didn't just read about it, you did it. When you hit all 3, the course is done. You close it, you celebrate, you move on. No guilt, no lingering, you finished, and finishing builds the confidence to start the next one. Keeping it lean. Here's the final filter, the minimum effective curriculum. You're not building a PhD program, you're building a term, 6 to 12 weeks. You need the smallest set of courses that would still create meaningful change. Look at your course list. Be ruthless. Does each course clearly support your term focus? Does it move you toward your outcomes? If the answer is anything less than a strong yes, cut it. Park it in a future semester's list. It's not gone, it's just not now. Aim for 2 to 4 courses per term, not 10, not 20, 2 to 4, each one focused, each one finishable, each one designed to build a specific demonstrable skill. For each course that survives the cut, write a short justification, 1 sentence. This course earns its place because it directly enables me to specific outcome. If you can't write that sentence, the course doesn't belong in this term. This is hard. It feels like you're leaving value on the table, but you're not. You're concentrating value. You're choosing depth over breadth. You're designing for completion instead of coverage, making it real. Here's how you make your courses feel as real as anything you took in school. First, use strong, specific names. Avoid generic titles. Marketing fundamentals is boring. Launch-ready landing pages is compelling. Include a persona or context when it helps. Data visualization for managers. Storytelling for engineers. Cold emailing for freelancers. Test your course names by imagining them on a university syllabus. Would they excite you? Would you want to take them? If not, rewrite. Second, mix resource formats. Don't make every course a book. Combine long-form reading with shorter, high-impact content. Use different media, text, audio, video, to reinforce the same concepts. Your brain learns differently from different formats, and variety keeps engagement high. Keep at least 1 quick win resource per course, something you can complete in 1 sitting. It builds momentum. Third, maintain a to consider later shelf. Every time you find an interesting resource that doesn't fit your current courses, capture it. Write it down, but don't add it to your active curriculum. Not now. You'll revisit this shelf when planning future terms. This reassures your brain that nothing is lost. It's just deferred, and that makes it easier to stay focused. What winning looks like. If you do this right, 3 things happen. First, you actually complete at least 1 course start to finish. Not just read most of a book, not just watch some videos. Complete all the content. All the practice, the artifact, done. And that completion changes how you see yourself. You're not someone who starts things, you're someone who finishes them. Second, you notice clearer progress, less decision fatigue. When you sit down for a learning session, you don't waste 10 minutes figuring out what to do. You're in course 2, working on the practice goals, building toward the artifact. The path is clear. The friction is gone. Third, you feel proud saying, I'm currently taking a course on X. Because it's real. It's your creation. It's not some random collection of articles. It's a designed curriculum with structure, resources, and outcomes. And that pride, that sense of legitimacy, keeps you coming back. And if you keep doing this, if you design tight, focused courses term after term, you develop a personal template, a way of structuring learning that works for you. You start thinking like a curriculum designer in every area of growth. And other people notice. They ask for your course lists. They want to know how you're learning so effectively, because you're not just consuming, you're building. But here's the thing about courses. They're only as good as what you do with them. You can design the perfect syllabus, choose the perfect resources, and still fail if you never produce anything real. Because knowledge without output is just trivia, and trivia doesn't change your life. That's the problem we're solving next. Chapter 6, Projects Over Theory. You've designed your courses, you've chosen your resources, you know what you're learning and when you're learning it. But here's the question that separates people who grow from people who just collect information. What are you building? Not reading, not watching, not taking notes. Building, creating, shipping. Because if you finish this term with nothing but highlights in a book and ideas in your head, you haven't learned, you've consumed. And consumption without creation is the fastest way to forget everything you just studied. This chapter is about flipping the ratio. It's about making output, not input, the center of your curriculum. It's about ensuring that every course, every resource, every learning session leads to something real, something you can point to, something that proves you didn't just read about it, you did it. The shift is simple but brutal. Projects over theory, always. Why output is the only thing that matters. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Without visible outputs, your learning is invisible. To others, sure, but more importantly, to yourself. You can read 10 books on communication and still feel like you don't know how to communicate. You can watch 20 hours of tutorials on data analysis and still freeze when someone asks you to build a dashboard. Why? Because reading and watching create the illusion of competence. They feel productive. They feel like progress. But they don't rewire your brain the way application does. Projects force you to retrieve what you've learned, to synthesize it, to apply it in a real context with real constraints. And that process, the struggle of turning theory into practice, is where actual learning happens. Mistakes during projects create the strongest memories. Confusion during projects reveals the gaps in your understanding. Success during projects builds confidence in a way that passive consumption never can. Here's the other part nobody talks about. In most fields, you're judged by what you've shipped, not what you've read. Portfolios create opportunities, not vague claims about being a lifelong learner, not lists of courses you've taken. Real artifacts, real work, real proof that you can do the thing. And over time, those projects become your long-term asset. Your track record, your reputation, the thing that opens doors you didn't even know existed. The capstone that holds it all together. So how do you make this real? How do you turn a term of learning into something tangible? You design a capstone project. One ambitious but realistic piece of work that integrates everything you're learning this term. Not 5 projects, not 10, 1. Because focus compounds and scattered effort produces scattered results. Your capstone should scare you a little, not paralyze you, just push you. It should be something you'd be proud to show publicly, something that when you finish it, changes how you see yourself, something that makes you think, I built that, I can do this. It should also integrate multiple sub-skills from your courses. If you're learning communication, maybe your capstone is a presentation you'll deliver to your team. If you're learning data literacy, maybe it's a dashboard that answers a real business question. If you're learning storytelling, maybe it's a series of articles or a talk. The key is integration. The capstone isn't just practice for one skill. It's proof that you can combine skills to create something whole. And here's the critical part. Frame it as something real, not a practice project, not a learning exercise, a real thing. Something that could live in your portfolio, something that could be used, something that matters. When you do this, your entire term snaps into focus. Every course assignment becomes a step toward the capstone. Every resource becomes a tool for building it. Every learning session has a clear purpose: move the project forward. Breaking it into milestones. A capstone sounds great in theory, but in practice, it's easy to freeze, to procrastinate, to tell yourself you'll start next week. Because big projects are intimidating, they're vague, they're overwhelming. That's where milestones come in. Break your capstone into 3 to 5 phases: research, draft, prototype, test, finalize, whatever makes sense for your project. Each phase gets a clear deliverable, not work on the project, a specific output, an outline, a rough version, a beta, something you can point to and say this phase is done. Now assign dates. Place each milestone on specific weeks in your time architecture. Week 2, research complete, outline done. Week 5, first draft finished. Week 8, prototype tested. Week 12, final version shipped. The path becomes visible. The overwhelm shrinks. And here's the magic. When you tie your course assignments directly to these milestones, everything connects. You're not just reading about data visualization in a vacuum. You're reading it because you need to build a dashboard by week 5. You're not just studying storytelling for fun. You're studying it because you're writing an article by week 8. The learning has context. It has urgency. It has purpose. This is how you avoid the trap of endless preparation. You're not waiting until you know enough to start building. You're building from day 1, and the building is teaching you what you need to know. Connecting every course to real work. Here's a simple rule that will transform your learning. For every course, define at least one project-linked assignment, something that directly feeds into your capstone or creates a standalone output. If you're taking a course on writing clearly, your assignment isn't read chapters 1 through 5. It's write the first draft of my article using the principles from chapter 3. If you're taking a course on facilitation, your assignment isn't watch the videos. It's design the agenda for my upcoming presentation using the framework from video 4. Balance quick assignments with deeper ones. Some should take 1 to 2 hours. Others should span multiple sessions. But every single one should force you to use specific concepts from your resources. Not summarize them, not highlight them, use them. And avoid assignments that are disconnected from real-world application. Write a summary of this chapter is busy work. Apply this framework to my actual project is learning. The difference is everything. When you design assignments this way, you're not just consuming content. You're testing it. You're seeing what works and what doesn't. You're building the muscle memory of application. And by the time you finish the course, you don't just understand the concepts. You've used them multiple times in real contexts. The lies that keep you stuck. Before you start building, let's kill 3 myths that are probably running in your head right now. Myth 1, I'm not ready to build yet. This is perfectionism dressed up as prudence, and it's a trap. You don't become ready by waiting. You become ready by building, by making mistakes, by getting confused and figuring it out. Start with small, low-stakes versions of your project. A rough outline, a simple prototype, a messy first draft. You'll learn more from building badly than from preparing perfectly. Myth 2, once I finish enough reading, then I'll start projects. No, this logic leads to endless preparation and zero action. You need to alternate theory and practice from day 1. Read a chapter, apply it, watch a video, test it, learn a concept, use it. The back and forth is what makes it stick. And yes, you'll be confused early on. That's normal. That's necessary. Confusion is a sign you're stretching, not a sign you should stop. Myth 3, projects must be huge to be impressive. Wrong. Scope creep kills completion, and completion is what builds confidence. Small, polished projects often impress more than giant, unfinished ones. Design tiny but real projects, a 5-minute talk instead of a keynote, a single dashboard instead of a full analytics platform, 3 articles instead of a book. Tiny but real punches above its weight because it's done, and done beats perfect every time. How to actually build it. Here's the step-by-step. First, list 3 to 5 possible capstones, projects that excite you and scare you a little. Evaluate each by relevance to your roadmap and feasibility in one term. Be honest, can you actually finish this in 12 weeks, or are you setting yourself up to fail? Choose one. Write a 1-paragraph brief. Describe what done looks like. Be specific. A 10-slide presentation on X delivered to my team with clear takeaways and next steps. A working dashboard that tracks Y, tested with real data and shared with stakeholders. a series of 3 articles on Z published on Medium with at least one getting meaningful engagement. The clearer the target, the easier it is to hit. Now map your milestones. Break the capstone into phases. Assign each phase a deliverable. Place them on your calendar. Week 2, this. Week 5, that. Week 10, the other thing. Make it real. Then, design your course assignments. For each course, define 2 to 4 assignments that move the capstone forward. Make sure each assignment uses specific concepts from your resources. Make sure some are quick wins and some are deeper dives. Make sure all of them connect to the real project you're building. Finally, integrate feedback. Identify 1 to 3 people who can give you targeted feedback. Not cheerleaders, not critics. People who know the domain and will tell you the truth. Plan when you'll share drafts or prototypes with them. Week 4, show the outline. Week 7, share the rough version. Week 10, get feedback on the beta. And here's the key. Incorporate their feedback into the next version. Don't defend, don't explain. Just listen, learn, and improve. Making it stick. Here's how you make sure you actually finish. First, scope ruthlessly. Start with the smallest version of your project that still feels real. Use a version 1, version 2, version 3 mindset. You're not building the final perfect version this term. You're building version 1. You can improve it later. Cut anything that doesn't directly contribute to your learning goals. Simplicity beats ambition when it comes to completion. Second, reuse work across contexts. Design projects that can double as portfolio pieces or internal presentations. Adapt one project to practice multiple skills: writing, design, data, speaking. Look for ways to reuse research, outlines, frameworks in future projects. Every hour you invest should pay dividends in multiple ways. Third, share early, not just at the end. Show rough drafts to safe people. Get fast feedback. Use early sharing to create healthy pressure and accountability, and celebrate incremental improvements. Don't wait for the perfect final version to feel proud. Celebrate the outline. Celebrate the rough draft. Celebrate the beta. Each step forward is a win. What winning looks like. If you do this right, 3 things happen. First, you complete your capstone to a standard you're willing to share. Not perfect, but real. Polished enough that you're proud of it. And you receive at least one meaningful piece of external feedback that makes the next version better. Second, your project gives you new ideas and clarity about what to learn next. You see the gaps. You see what you need to deepen. You see where the next term should focus. The project isn't just proof of what you learned, it's a roadmap for what comes next. Third, your capstone opens a real door: an interview, a client, a promotion, a collaboration, a speaking opportunity, something tangible, something that wouldn't have happened without the project. Because projects create opportunities in a way that credentials never can. And if you keep doing this, if you ship at least one meaningful project every term, you begin to see your life differently. Not as a series of tasks, but as a sequence of increasingly ambitious projects, each one building on the last, each one proving you can do more than you thought. But here's the thing about projects. They only work if you can track them, if you can see progress, if you have a system that keeps you honest and prevents things from falling through the cracks. Because even the best designed capstone can die in the chaos of daily life if you don't have a way to manage it. And that's exactly what we're building next. Chapter 7, Systems That Stick. You've built the curriculum. You've designed the courses. You've planned the projects. You've blocked the time. And for the first 2 weeks, it works. You're showing up. You're making progress. You feel like you finally cracked the code. Then week 3 hits. You miss a session. You forget where you left off in that book. You can't remember if you finished the assignment for course 2 or if that was course 3. You sit down to learn and spend 10 minutes just trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. The friction builds, the momentum dies, and by week 5, you're back to random learning, wondering what happened. Here's what happened. You relied on memory and motivation. And memory is unreliable. Motivation is fickle. Neither one survives contact with real life. This chapter is about building something that does survive. A system, not a complicated one. Not something that requires an hour of maintenance every week. A simple, visible structure that tracks what you're learning, shows you where you are, and quietly nudges you forward even when you don't feel like it. Because systems beat willpower, every single time. Why your brain can't handle this alone. Let's start with a hard truth. You will forget. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, because your brain wasn't designed to hold this much operational detail. Think about it. You're juggling 2 to 4 courses. Each course has a primary resource and supporting materials. Each course has assignments. You have a capstone project with multiple milestones. You have weekly learning blocks. You have a term timeline. That's dozens of moving pieces. And your brain is trying to hold all of it, where you are, what's next, what's done, what's pending, while also managing your job, your relationships, your life. It can't. So it drops things. You forget which chapter you're on. You lose track of which assignments you've completed. You can't remember if you moved that milestone or if it's still on the original date. And every time you sit down to learn, you waste mental energy reconstructing where you left off instead of actually doing the work. Externalizing your system fixes this. When you put your curriculum on a board, in a document, in a tool, anywhere outside your head, you free up massive amounts of mental bandwidth. You stop using your brain as a storage device and start using it as a processing device. You stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, how can I do this better? And here's the part most people miss. Visibility drives motivation. When you can see your progress, when you can watch items move from to learn, to learning, to learned, to applied, it feels rewarding. Those tiny visible wins keep you coming back. They remind you that you're not stuck, you're moving. And movement, even small movement, is addictive. The board that runs your curriculum. So what does this system actually look like? At its core, it's a learning Kanban. 4 columns, simple, visual, powerful. Column 1, to learn. Everything you've planned for this term goes here. Every course, every resource, every project. This is your backlog, your queue, the work waiting for you. Column 2, learning. This is what you're actively engaged with right now. The book you're reading, the course you're taking, the project you're building. Items move here when you start them. Column 3, learned. This is what you've consumed and understood. You've finished the resource, you've completed the course content, you've absorbed the theory, but you haven't applied it yet. Column 4, applied. This is the gold. This is where learning becomes real. You didn't just read about it, you used it, you built something, you shipped something, you demonstrated the skill in a real context. The flow is simple: to learn, learning, learned, applied. Every item on your board moves through this pipeline, and the act of moving items, physically or digitally, creates a sense of progress that pure mental tracking can never match. Where does this board live? Wherever you'll actually use it. A physical wall with sticky notes, a notebook with columns drawn in pen, a digital tool like Trello, Notion, or a simple spreadsheet. The medium doesn't matter. What matters is that it's visible, it's easy to update, and you look at it regularly. Set it up now. 4 columns, clear labels. Then add cards or entries for every course, resource, and project in your current term. Everything goes in to learn to start. This is your baseline, your snapshot of what you're committing to. Measuring what matters. A board shows you what's moving, but it doesn't tell you how much you're moving or whether you're on track. That's where metrics come in. For each course, define 1 to 3 simple indicators of progress. Not 10, not a complex dashboard, 1 to 3, and keep them simple enough that you can update them in under a minute. Maybe it's chapters read, maybe it's practice sessions completed, maybe it's outputs created. Whatever makes sense for that course. The key is to balance quantity metrics with quality metrics. Hours logged is a quantity metric. It tells you effort, but not results. Projects completed is a quality metric. It tells you outcomes. You want both. At the start of your term, record your baseline. Course 1, 0 chapters read, 0 assignments done. Course 2, 0 practice sessions, 0 outputs. This gives you a starting point, a way to measure movement. Then, during your weekly review, you update. Course 1, 5 chapters read, 2 assignments done. Course 2, 3 practice sessions, 1 output. You're not just tracking for the sake of tracking, you're creating feedback. You're seeing patterns. You're learning what pace is realistic for you. And here's the trick. Keep metrics easy to understand at a glance. If you need a calculator or a complex formula to know if you're on track, the metric is too complicated. Simplicity is the point. You want to look at your board and instantly know, am I moving? Am I stuck? Do I need to adjust? The weekly ritual that keeps it alive. Here's where most systems die. People set them up, use them for a week, then forget they exist. The board gets buried, the metrics go stale. The whole thing becomes one more piece of abandoned productivity theater. The fix is simple. A weekly review, 30 to 60 minutes, same day, same time, non-negotiable. Pick a recurring slot, Sunday afternoon, Friday evening, Saturday morning, whatever works. The consistency matters more than the specific time. This is when you step back from the doing and look at the system, when you update your board, when you refresh your metrics, when you ask the 3 questions that matter most. What moved this week? Look at your board. What shifted from to learn to learning? What shifted from learning to learned? What made it all the way to applied? Celebrate that. Acknowledge it, even if it's small. What stalled? What's been sitting in learning for 3 weeks without moving? What course did you plan to start but never touched? What assignment did you skip? No judgment, just observation. Stalls are data. They tell you something about your plan, your energy, or your priorities. What needs adjusting? Based on what moved and what stalled, what should change? Do you need to cut a course? Do you need to extend a deadline? Do you need to simplify an assignment? Do you need to add more time blocks? The review isn't just about tracking. It's about adapting. It's about making the second half of your term better than the first. And here's the key. Keep this ritual simple. If it feels like a chore, you'll skip it. If it feels like a useful reset, you'll protect it. The goal is a lightweight check-in, not an exhaustive audit. Update the board, update the metrics, ask the 3 questions, adjust, done. Handling the unfinished. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Curriculum debt. The courses you didn't finish, the resources you abandoned, the projects you started and dropped. They're sitting there in the back of your mind, creating guilt and clutter. Your system needs a way to handle this, explicitly, consciously, not by ignoring it, not by letting it rot in the background. During your weekly or midterm review, list your unfinished items, everything that's been in learning too long, everything you planned but never started, everything that's clearly not happening this term. Write them down. Now decide case by case, finish, pause, or retire. Finish means you're committing to completing it this term. You're moving it to the top of your priority list. You're blocking time for it. You're not just hoping, you're planning. Pause means you're consciously deferring it, not abandoning it, just acknowledging that it doesn't fit this term. You move it to a future terms list. You revisit it when planning the next cycle. It's off your active board, but not forgotten. Retire means you're letting it go. It sounded good when you added it, but it doesn't serve your roadmap. It doesn't fit your focus. It's not worth your time. You move it to an archive or delete it entirely. And you do it without guilt, because saying no to the wrong things is how you say yes to the right ones. This process, explicitly deciding the fate of unfinished work, clears mental space. It stops the low-level anxiety of "I should be doing that." It gives you permission to focus on what actually matters, making it effortless. Here's how you make sure your system sticks instead of becoming one more thing you abandon. First, keep it lightweight. Avoid overly complex tools that require constant tinkering. Avoid adding fields and columns and tags just because you can. Limit yourself to the minimum needed to stay clear and on track. If updating your system feels heavy, simplify until it feels effortless. The best system is the one you'll actually use. Second, celebrate movement. Treat moving a card from learning to learned as a mini victory. Add small rituals, a check mark, a note of gratitude, a moment of acknowledgement. These micro celebrations build positive associations with learning. They make the system feel rewarding instead of bureaucratic. Third, use tags to see your history. Color code or tag cards by domain. Tag items by term. This lets you quickly review what you've built over the past months. You can see patterns, you can see growth, you can see that you're not just busy, you're building. What success looks like. If you do this right, 3 things happen. First, your board clearly shows the flow of items from to learn to applied. You can look back over a term and see exactly what you completed. Not vague memories, hard evidence, and that evidence builds confidence. Second, you adjust your curriculum midterm based on what the system reveals. You're not blindly following the original plan. You're adapting. You're learning from your own behavior. You're getting smarter about how you learn. Third, your system becomes a natural part of your weekly rhythm. It's not extra. It's not optional. It's just what you do, like brushing your teeth, like checking your calendar. And when that happens, you stop relying on motivation. You're running on structure, and structure doesn't quit. And if you keep using this system, if you track, review, and refine term after term, you build a data set, a history, a record of what works for you and what doesn't, and that data becomes your advantage. You can confidently design tighter, smarter future terms because you know your realistic capacity. You're not guessing. You're not being overly optimistic. You're designing based on evidence. But here's the thing about systems. They only work if you keep improving them, if you learn from what breaks, if you adapt when life changes. Because no plan survives the first few weeks unchanged, and the people who win aren't the ones with perfect plans. They're the ones who know how to evolve them. That's what we're tackling next. Chapter 8, Evolving the Plan. You finished your first term. Maybe you crushed it. Maybe you struggled. Maybe you landed somewhere in between. Some courses completed, some abandoned, some projects shipped, some left half done. And now you're staring at the question that separates people who plateau from people who compound. What do you do with what just happened? Most people do one of 2 things. They either ignore the term entirely and jump straight into planning the next one, repeating the same mistakes. Or they beat themselves up for everything that went wrong, decide the whole system is broken, and quit. Both are wrong. This chapter is about the third option, the one that turns raw experience into wisdom, the one that treats your curriculum as a living system instead of a static plan, the one that makes each term sharper, leaner, and more effective than the last. Because here's the truth. Your first plan was a prototype. It was your best guess based on limited information, and now you have data, real data, about what works for you, what doesn't, and what needs to change. Ignoring that data is insane. Using it is how you win. Why your first draft was never meant to be final. Let's start by killing the perfectionism that's probably running in your head right now. You're thinking, if I had just been more disciplined, I would have stuck to the plan. Or, if I had designed it better from the start, I wouldn't need to change anything. Stop. Your first curriculum version was always going to be imperfect. Not because you're bad at planning, because you didn't have the information yet. You didn't know how long it would actually take to read that book. You didn't know how hard that project would be. You didn't know which learning blocks would consistently work and which ones would get eaten by life. Now you know. And clinging to a flawed plan, stubbornly following the original design even when it's clearly not working, isn't discipline. It's denial. It's ego. It's the sunk cost fallacy dressed up as commitment. Iteration is proof of seriousness. It's proof that you're paying attention. It's proof that you care more about results than about being right. The people who grow fastest aren't the ones who execute the perfect plan. They're the ones who execute, learn, adjust, and execute again. Your behavior and results from the last term contain valuable information, patterns, signals, clues about how you actually learn, not how you wish you learned. Ignoring this data means you'll repeat the same mistakes term after term. Using it means each cycle gets better. And here's the key. Reflection is where raw experience becomes wisdom. Without reflection, you're just doing. You're not learning from the doing. You're not extracting the lessons. You're not feeding the insights back into the system. Reflection closes the loop. It turns action into improvement. The retro that changes everything. So how do you actually do this? How do you turn a messy, imperfect term into actionable insights for the next one? You run a term-end retrospective, 60 to 90 minutes, scheduled, protected, non-negotiable. This isn't optional. This is where the real learning happens. Find a quiet space. Grab your board, your metrics, your notes. Look at what actually happened over the past 6, 8, or 12 weeks. Not what you planned, what happened. And ask 3 simple questions. What worked? Be specific. Not the courses were good. Which courses? Which assignments? Which time blocks? Which resources? What gave you the biggest return on effort? What felt energizing instead of draining? What would you absolutely do again? Write it down. Concrete examples. Tuesday evening blocks worked consistently. The capstone project kept me motivated. Starting with a quick win resource built momentum. These aren't vague feelings. They're data points. They're the foundation of your next term. What didn't work? Again, be specific. Which courses felt like a slog? Which resources were too advanced or too basic? Which time blocks got consistently skipped? Which assignments felt disconnected from real outcomes? What made you procrastinate? No judgment, no shame, just observation. You're a scientist analyzing an experiment. The goal isn't to beat yourself up, it's to see clearly. Friday morning blocks never happened. Course 3 was too ambitious for one term. The primary resource for Course 2 was too dense. Write it down. What will you change? Based on what worked and what didn't. What's different next term? Fewer courses, different time blocks, simpler projects, better resources, more frequent reviews, less ambitious scope? Be concrete. Next term, 3 courses instead of 4. Next term, no Friday blocks, add Sunday mornings instead. Next term, choose primary resources at my actual level, not aspirational level. These decisions are your term-end deliverable. They're what you're taking forward. Adjusting the roadmap without losing direction. Now zoom out. Look at your lifelong curriculum roadmap from Chapter 2. The one that maps your identity, your outcomes, your domains. Compare it to what actually happened this term. Did you spend most of your time in the domains you planned, or did you drift? If you drifted, why? Was it because the original roadmap was wrong, or because you got distracted? There's a difference. One requires a roadmap change. The other requires recommitment. Decide which domains stay, which shrink, and which grow. Maybe you plan to focus on 3 domains but only had bandwidth for 2. That's fine. Adjust. Maybe one domain turned out to be more important than you thought. Double down. Maybe another domain felt forced. Drop it or defer it. The key is to keep your long-term direction stable while refining your short-term path. Your identity doesn't change every term. Your big outcomes don't flip every 12 weeks. But the tactics, the specific domains, the order, the intensity, those can and should evolve based on what you're learning about yourself and your life. And here's where concept ladders come in. Look at the domains you worked on this term. Did you stay too superficial? Did you skim the surface without going deep enough to actually use the knowledge? If so, the next term should climb one rung higher. Same domain, deeper concepts, more advanced frameworks, higher level models. Or maybe you went too deep too fast. Maybe you tried to tackle advanced material before you had the foundation. If so, the next term should step back. Build the base, get comfortable, then climb. The point is progression. Each term should build on the last. Not randomly, deliberately. You're not starting over every cycle. You're ascending. Refining the courses and projects. Now look at the individual courses and projects. Which courses were too easy? You finished them quickly, but you didn't learn much. They were review, not growth. Note that. Next term, raise the difficulty. Which courses were too hard? You struggled. You got stuck. You couldn't make progress. Note that too. Next term, find resources that match your actual level, or break the course into smaller pieces spread across multiple terms. Which courses were poorly designed? Maybe the resources didn't connect. Maybe the assignments felt arbitrary. Maybe the completion criteria were vague. Redesign them. Apply what you learned in Chapter 5. Make them tighter, clearer, more aligned with real outputs. And which courses should you repeat? Sometimes the best move is to go through the same material again, but deeper, with more focus, with better application. Repetition isn't failure, it's mastery. Now look at your projects. Which type gave you the biggest learning return? The capstone, the smaller assignments, the quick wins, the long complex builds? Pay attention. That's your signal for what to emphasize next term. And be honest, did you finish your projects? If not, why? Too ambitious? Too vague? Too disconnected from the courses? Started too late? Use that information. Design better projects next time. Smaller scope, earlier start, tighter connection to the learning. Designing the next term smarter. Here's where it all comes together. You're not planning the next term from scratch. You're planning it with evidence, with data, with lessons learned. Use your retro notes as input, not just your mood, not just what sounds exciting today. What does the data say? What worked? What didn't? What needs to change? Design a slightly tighter, more realistic curriculum. Not a radically different one, slightly. 1 or 2 key changes. Maybe you cut one course. Maybe you shift one time block. Maybe you simplify one project. Small adjustments compound. And here's the trick. Set one clear process improvement goal. Not a content goal, a process goal. This term I will update my board every week without fail. This term I will start my capstone in week 1, not week 8. This term I will choose resources at my level, not above it. One process improvement per term. That's it. You're not overhauling everything. You're tweaking one variable, you're running one experiment, and next term you'll evaluate that experiment and tweak something else. This is how you get better, not by chasing perfection, by iterating, by learning, by compounding small improvements over time. The lies that stop iteration. Before you start your next term, let's kill 3 myths that keep people stuck. Myth 1, if I change the plan, I failed. No, changing the plan based on evidence is a strength. It's intelligence, it's adaptability. Replace shame with curiosity. Ask, what did I learn about my process? Not, why did I screw up? Myth 2, real discipline means never pivoting. Wrong. Stubbornly sticking to a broken plan isn't discipline, it's denial. Elite performers adjust strategy constantly, they just don't change the goal every week. Learn to separate loyalty to your identity from loyalty to a specific tactic. The identity stays, the tactics flex. Myth 3, reflection is optional, doing is everything. Mindless repetition is not growth, it's just repetition. Reflection multiplies the value of action. It's the difference between running in circles and running in a spiral, always moving forward, always climbing. Embrace the rhythm. Act, reflect, adjust, act again. That's the loop. That's the engine. That's how you turn one good term into 10 great ones. What winning looks like. If you do this right, 3 things happen. First, your second term curriculum looks clearly sharper than the first. Fewer courses, better resources, tighter projects, more realistic time blocks. You can see the improvement. You can feel it. Second, you see measurable improvements in completion rates or project quality. You're finishing more, shipping better, moving faster. Not because you're trying harder, because you're designing smarter. Third, you begin to trust your ability to self-correct and adapt. You stop fearing mistakes. You stop clinging to plans. You know that if something doesn't work, you'll catch it, adjust it, and improve it next time. That trust, that confidence in your process is worth more than any single skill. And if you keep doing this, if you run honest retros, update your roadmap, refine your courses, and iterate term after term, you develop a personal pattern for improving like clockwork. Your learning speed and effectiveness noticeably outpace your past self. You feel calm and confident even when plans change, because you trust your process. But here's the thing. All of this, the identity, the focus, the time architecture, the courses, the projects, the systems, the iteration, it's all just preparation. It's all just scaffolding. The real question is, what does this actually build? What does your life look like when you run this system not just once, but over and over, year after year? That's what we're closing with. Chapter 9, Lifelong Ascent. You've reached the end of the book, but here's the truth. This isn't an ending. It's a beginning. Everything you've read up to this point, the identity work, the focus frameworks, the time architecture, the course design, the projects, the systems, the iteration, all of it was preparation, scaffolding, the foundation for something bigger. This chapter is about what you build on that foundation, not just in the next term, not just in the next year, but over the arc of your entire life. Because when you run this system repeatedly, when you design term after term after term, something profound happens. You don't just learn skills, you change who you are. You change how you see time. You change how you relate to uncertainty. You change your entire trajectory. This is about lifelong ascent, and it starts the moment you close this book. The system you've built. Let's take one last look at what you now have. A complete framework for self-directed learning that most people will never build. You started in chaos, scattered resources, random consumption, no direction, the content swamp. You named the problem, the missing syllabus of adulthood, the gap between how your brain needs to learn and how adult life actually works. Then, you built the solution, piece by piece. You defined your identity and outcomes. You chose your focus using the intersection of curiosity and usefulness. You architected time, turning vague intention into scheduled action. You designed real courses with clear boundaries and completion criteria. You committed to projects over theory, ensuring every term produces tangible outputs. You created systems to track progress and stay honest. And you learned to iterate, treating each term as a prototype that gets better with every cycle. Each chapter was a piece. Together, they form one coherent framework, a repeatable playbook for designing your own education. A method that works whether you're learning coding, writing, leadership, data, design, or anything else that matters to your future. And here's the shift that happened along the way. You stopped being a consumer. You stopped hoping that the right course would appear, that the right opportunity would find you, that someone else would hand you the syllabus. You became a designer, an architect, the dean of your own lifelong university. You moved from I hope to I plan and execute. And that shift, that identity shift, is worth more than any single skill you'll ever learn. What this unlocks. So, what does this actually give you? What changes when you have a repeatable system for learning anything? First, control. You no longer have to wait for courses, degrees, or bosses to give you permission to grow. You can design your own upskilling at will on your own timeline. A new technology emerges, you can build a term around it. A new role opens up that requires skills you don't have, you can acquire them in 12 weeks. You're not dependent, you're self-directed. And that psychological shift, from waiting to creating, changes everything. Second, freedom. A strong learning system makes changing careers less terrifying because you know you can learn whatever the new field requires. You're not trapped by your current job title or past choices. You have a method, a process, a way to bridge from where you are to where you want to be. New fields become accessible. Pivots become possible. You're no longer stuck. Third, confidence. Real, earned confidence. Not the fake kind that comes from affirmations, the kind that comes from completing terms and shipping projects, from proving to yourself over and over that you can learn hard things, that you can design a plan and follow through, that you can build skills that open doors. You now have evidence, and evidence builds self-trust in a way nothing else can. You can design and climb your own ladder, not the ladder someone else built for you, your ladder, toward your version of mastery, toward your version of success. And that agency, that sense of control over your own trajectory, is the real prize. How this changes your relationships. Here's something most people don't talk about. Your learning changes the people around you. When you engage in deep structured learning, your conversations get richer. You have more to offer, more insights, more frameworks, more ways to help. You become more interesting, more valuable, not in a transactional way, in a genuine way. People want to be around people who are growing, who are curious, who are building things. And you can create shared learning journeys. Imagine co-designing a mini curriculum with a friend or colleague, running parallel terms, sharing projects, giving each other feedback. Those shared experiences deepen bonds in ways that casual hangouts never can. They create mutual respect. They create accountability. They create something real. Your discipline will also gently raise the standards of your circle, not by preaching, not by judging, just by modeling. When people see you consistently showing up, consistently shipping, consistently growing, some of them will want that too. They'll ask how you do it. They'll start designing their own terms, and suddenly you're surrounded by fellow lifelong learners instead of passive consumers. But here's the hard part. Some relationships may drift. People who resist growth, people who are comfortable staying where they are, people who feel threatened by your progress. That's okay. It's not a failure. It's a natural consequence of choosing a different path. You're building a network aligned with who you're becoming, not who you used to be. What you can do now that you couldn't before. Let's get concrete. What are you actually capable of now that you weren't before you read this book? You can design targeted learning sprints on demand. Someone mentions a skill you need. You can outline a 6-week term around it in a single sitting. No paralysis, no overwhelm, no endless research about the best way to learn it. You have a method, you apply it, you move. You can build and showcase real-world projects, not just consume theory, not just take notes. Build, ship, show. And those projects become your portfolio, your proof, your leverage. You can use them to negotiate better roles, better rates, better responsibilities. You can point to them and say, I built this, I can do this for you. You can evolve your own system over time. You're not stuck with the framework in this book. You can customize it, refine it, add your own tools, rituals, tweaks, make it yours. And as you do, you become the person others ask, how do you learn so effectively? You become a model, a resource, a guide. And here's the compounding part. Each term gets easier. The first one is hard. You're learning the system while using it. But the second term, easier. You have templates, you have patterns, you know what works. The third term, even easier. The decisions become defaults, the friction disappears. The system runs on less and less conscious effort. Your course designs become reusable. Your project structures become templates. Your review questions become rituals. You build a personal library of frameworks you can plug into any new topic, and each new term becomes faster to design and more powerful in results. And the confidence? It shortens the doubt cycle. You spend less time on can I do this and more time on how will I do this next. You recognize earlier when a tactic isn't working and adjust faster. You stop second-guessing. You stop procrastinating. Learning hard things becomes your normal, not because you're special, because you have a process. Your first move. So here's the moment of truth. You've read the book, you understand the system, you see the potential. Now what? Choose one domain, right now. Don't overthink it. What single area matters most in the next 3 to 6 months? What skill, if you built it, would meaningfully change your life or career? Trust your first, honest answer. Write it down. Now draft a 1-page term plan. Literally 1 page. At the top, write your identity statement. I am the kind of person who. Below that, write your focus domain. Below that, list 2 to 3 courses. Give them real titles, outcome-oriented, specific. Below that, describe your capstone project in 1 sentence. What will you build? What will done look like? Add your key milestones. Week 2, this. Week 5, that. Week 10, the other thing. Set your start and end dates, actual calendar dates, and choose 1 weekly review time, Sunday afternoon, Friday evening, whatever works. Write it down. That's it. 1 page, your next term, designed, ready. Now commit to 1 immediate action. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Before you close this book, what's the first small step? Naming your courses? Blocking your first learning session on your calendar? Choosing your primary resource? Sending a message to someone who can give you feedback on your capstone? Do it, right now, no matter how small. Let that action be your proof that this book changed behavior, not just thoughts. The choice in front of you. Picture yourself 1 year from now. You've run 3 terms, maybe 4. You've designed courses. You've shipped projects. You've built skills that didn't exist in your life 12 months ago. You can point to a portfolio of work. You can see the progression. You can feel the difference in how you think, how you work, how you show up. Imagine the pride of seeing your own projects, skills, and confidence stacked like bricks. Each term building on the last. Each project proving you can do more than you thought. Each completed course reinforcing the identity. I am a lifelong learner who designs my own curriculum and follows through. That version of you is built from what you do this week. Not next month, not when things calm down, this week. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who read this book will close it and slide back into randomness. They'll feel inspired for a day, maybe two. Then life will happen. The urgency will fade. The old patterns will return. They'll go back to scattered learning, half-finished courses, vague intentions. They'll drift. You don't have to be one of them. You can decide, right now, consciously, that you're different. That you're the kind of person who doesn't just read, who acts. Who doesn't just plan, who executes. Who doesn't just start, who finishes. Claim the identity. Say it out loud. I am the kind of person who designs my own curriculum and follows through. Not someday. Now, today. This moment. The simple truth. Here's what happens if you do this. If you take one step today. If you design your first term. If you show up for your learning blocks. If you ship your first project. If you run your first retro and design your second term better than the first. You act, you review, you adjust, you act again, and you repeat, term after term, project after project, year after year. And something extraordinary happens. Not overnight, not in one term, but over time, over the arc of years. Your skills stack, your confidence compounds, your reputation shifts. Opportunities appear that wouldn't have existed if you'd stayed where you were. Doors open, conversations change, your entire trajectory bends upward. Not because you're more talented than anyone else, not because you got lucky, because you had a system, because you designed your own education instead of waiting for someone else to hand it to you, because you chose to be a lifelong learner in the most literal, most deliberate sense. And here's the simple truth that makes all of this inevitable. If you keep moving, keep designing, and keep learning, lifelong ascent is not optional. It is guaranteed. The system works. The question is, will you? Your first term starts now.